every day is so different. Every day is a challenge, and I'm always working on something. It can never be the same thing day in and day out because we're working with humans, and by nature, we're all very different. So I get my math, I get my marketing, I get to make model, I get to work with all kinds of people, I get to create, I get to build budgets, HR. So really just the whole gamut of everything.
Rebecca Cook blends analytical precision with empathy as Director of Multifamily Management at Friedman Real Estate. Her rural Oregon upbringing, marked by food stamps and free lunch tickets, instilled the importance of the housing stability she now champions professionally. Recruited from Subway to Leasing after a customer noticed her efficiency, Rebecca discovered her talent for pattern recognition and process optimization. 30 years later, she creates clear operational boundaries that empower her teams to make confident decisions while never losing sight of residents' needs.
I also work hard to make sure people can bring me their mistakes. I work very hard at that, and I learned that lesson a very long time ago from one of my mentors and old bosses. And I'd made a very big mistake, and I was super green at the time. I was like, what did I do? I walk in my office, and I'm like, my boss's office, I made a whoops. And she's like, a whoops? I'm like, a big whoops. And this is what I did. This is how I want to solve it. And I've got A, B, and C, and B is my favorite. And she's like, okay, go call the client, go with B, run with it. I want that to be that person for my team.
What is the hardest part about your job today?
Let me think about that one.
Rebecca, welcome to the show.
Good morning.
Excited to have you here. I hope you like our RV park here in Houston.
It's beautiful. The view just with the lake is great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good choice.
Thank you. I'd love to start with a little bit about your background. So maybe your upbringing and where you grew up, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in unincorporated Washington County outside of Portland, Oregon. So you can't even really say it was a city. We had a Portland zip code, but we had another county, that we belonged to. And I like to say the elementary school was across the way from the local airstrip because it was so agricultural at the time. Over the years, of course, it's grown up. Didn't have a lot of money growing up, but, we had the same place. We were able to stay put. That was actually later on a really important part, now that I think about it, of my upbringing and housing and some of the things that I believe with that housing.
You think, really? Your, how so?
So grew up super poor. Food boxes, food stamps. Some of us who are older remember like the free cheese you'd stand in line for in the 80s. And we had free lunch up until, goodness, I think my last year of high school, we got reduced lunch. So really not well off, but my parents worked very hard at making sure that we had the same place. So we had the same school, the same friends. There was that consistency there.
What did your parents do growing up for work?
Not a lot. Yeah, mom was stay at home, a lot more common in those days. Dad worked at the shipyards, so seasonal, and painted when the shipyards weren't working. So,
do you have any siblings?
I do. Mm-hmm.
Are they older or younger?
So I have an older sister, an older half brother, and then a younger brother as well.
Okay. And what is your relationship with them?
I think great. Yeah.
Well, what I want to talk about, I kind of want to expand on that a little bit. So when you say that your upbringing has influenced what you're doing today, how, can you expand on that a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had to work pretty hard, just through to get to where I'm at right now. And I know everybody does. Rephrase that. I think I started working full time as a junior in high school, just to kind of help and provide for myself and help with the family. By the time I graduated, I was working 2 full-time jobs, and which is fine because that's what you need to do sometimes to make ends meet. I fell into this industry though because I was at the fastest, busiest Subway in Portland at the time. And this woman kept coming through saying, "You're super fast on your feet, super nice while you're being super fast on your feet. You should be a leasing agent." I'm like, what in the world is that? I had no idea. And it worked out really well, but she had to convince me to leave 2 full-time jobs because an office job is 9 to 5, right? 8 to 5, 8 to 6. I couldn't work my night job and my day job and make that work. So I told her, I'll give you 2 weeks, right? We'll give you 2 weeks if we can make ends meet. And the commissions are really good. If you hustle, they're really good. So I was able to go down to like one job and then some nighttime work, of course, but just to get started. And that was nice. But part of the reason my upbringing influenced that is that you had to work hard. That was how you were going to make ends meet. But then I started looking at my residents through a different set of eyes, not just as like a customer, but a place where people live, a place where stability makes a difference. So if we can marry the business with the fact that these are people's homes and their safe place, it's like this magic happens. And I love that. And I feel very strongly about that. Yeah. People will thrive if they know that they have a place to be.
I'm trying to imagine what it's like to work. You're saying you worked full time in high school. Mm-hmm. So when was that?
Usually you get out of high school 2:30, 3:30 in the afternoon. So you could go work like a 4 to 10.
What did you do?
Subway.
Worked at Subway.
I made sandwiches.
You made sandwiches.
Yeah. And then later on, I started work in retail. So I could do my retail and my food service. But those offices are open very long hours. So that's why it worked for me doing both.
So what was your, like growing up, what did you think of your financial state? Was it, you didn't know any better and that was just how life was? Or did you feel like, what was your experience internally?
Well, you knew that it wasn't how all of your friends lived. But we weren't also in a really rich neighborhood or anything where we stood out. So I would have friends who were probably in similar situations. And you got to think there was a lot of layoffs going on right at that time, and gas prices were high and taxes were high. And so there were some other economic things going on. But I was so young, I didn't really understand all of that. Looking back, you can kind of put it all together. Mm-hmm. You knew when you showed up with a little free lunch ticket that yours was a different color than your friends that paid lunch.
At
It's
school.
Yeah.
What are these? This is a food stamps, or what are these lunch tickets?
So in the public school system, back in the day, before all the electronics, you would stand in line and buy your lunch tickets at the beginning of the week or the beginning of the month. So I would get in line and then I would get the different color ticket so that when I would go to lunch every day, I would give the cafeteria person my food ticket to go get my tray of food.
And do you remember that feeling weird? Like, oh, I have a different color than everybody else's?
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Did people, was there bullying around that?
I really don't remember much. I kept to myself a lot in elementary school and junior high. I don't think my friends cared very much at all. But
And would you classify yourself as an introvert?
100%. 100% an introvert. I'm not shy, but I am definitely an introvert. So if you left me alone in a quiet room for a day, I'm all right with that. I can drive hours with no noise in the background.
And has this always been the case?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Put me in a corner with a good book. Don't need a lot of entertainment. I'm fine.
I like that. What does working on a shipyard entail?
Honestly, I don't know a lot about what my dad did while he was at the shipyards. I know he painted.
Were you guys close growing up?
No. He worked nights. He was gone.
Yeah. And what about your mom?
Amazing. Really, yeah, she's great.
Okay, cool. So you kind of so it sounds like you fell into the industry as most people did.
Yeah, I had to be convinced actually to give it a shot. But yeah, I was like, you guys are insane. Who would do this for a living? And I remember being a leasing agent doing it. And my first day on the job, it was, this person wants to see an apartment. And they're like, okay, there's the key. There's the model. Oh, okay, let's do it. And he leased. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And you meet people from all over the world. I've met British authors. I've met just people in walks of life that you would never have a chance to meet otherwise. And my mentors and my bosses would come in. They're like, oh, and you want to be an assistant manager? I'm like, never going to happen. Don't ask. And then eventually somebody would need filling in. So I'd step in. I'm like, all right, I can do this. And then they'd say, when are you going to be a community manager? I'm like, never going to happen. Don't ask. And then there would be maybe somebody on maternity leave and I step in. I'm like, okay, I can do this. And it's been really It's been great. I really love this industry. You never get bored. It's people, it's paperwork, it's marketing, it's homes. Like, I can't think of a line of work that it doesn't involve, including facilities, maintenance. I've learned so much about buildings, physical plants.
You're asked to be a leasing agent. I feel like a leasing agent requires a lot of like extroversion in some ways. No? Did that de-energize you, meeting all these people and talking to them and all of that?
No, because there's also so much paperwork that comes with it. So there's a lot to do. There's always something to learn, so you're never bored. And it's fun to meet people. So remember, I'm not shy. I don't have a problem meeting people or talking to them. And really, when you're helping someone find the perfect home, you just show them what you have and you ask them about their interests and point out how you can meet their need. I think that's a lot of it.
Yeah, because when I think about that as an introvert, one of the things we do at our company is because we're building AI tooling, the whole goal is like, how do we automate a lot of the admin work and all the online work, so to speak. And then the offline work is for, the leasing agent to build that relationship and nurture. How important would you say today, even the ability for a leasing agent to build a connection with the prospective resident is to impact the likelihood that they're going to lease?
I think it's so important. It's so important. I think it's even more important. You've got so much coming at you all the time now. And to build a connection with someone where you are willing to put your family and hang your hat at the end of the day, that's your safe place, the one place that you should feel comfortable and at ease. And if you walk in and the leasing agent is unkind, not receptive, doesn't care about your needs, why would you want to spend all, like, you're 24/7, this is where you are. Why would you want to do that if you're dreading every interaction with your customer service person?
And you think it's the difference between somebody leasing and not leasing?
Absolutely. Unless there is something about that building or location that it doesn't matter about the staff. But if you've got the same product across the street, you're going to go to the place where you're welcomed. Like, nobody wants to be unwelcome in their house. Nobody says, like, don't lease here. Or, I don't want to be around you. Why would you sign up for that?
So tell me a little bit. You started as a leasing agent. You said that, people in the industry or your manager said, why don't you do the next role? And you're like, no. And then you just kind of went to it. And then that kept happening. What was the subsequent role after leasing agent?
Assistant manager.
Yeah. Okay.
And then community manager. I took the very traditional, and then community manager, sort of like an interim, learning how to be a regional, then a regional manager, and then director.
So when you look at all the different roles, how do you compare, like, what is the main, obviously the main KPI or the goal for a leasing agent is to lease apartments, right? What is the assistant manager's goal?
I see that vary quite a bit by company. In my growing up in the industry, it was turnovers, scheduling those things, sure that the paperwork is done, that the checks are entered. So really that back office, nuts and bolts.
And community manager is
making sure everything runs on time. Wow. It is so much harder than it looks. You have to anticipate all the things coming at you. And when your team can't handle something or that came up, it falls on you to fix it.
So usually and maybe it's because I talk to more marketing people, the path is similar: leasing agent, assistant manager, community manager, regional. And then at some point you don't go the marketing route, you go more asset management. Mm-hmm. What is the other, when you're branching out, what are the other paths beyond, so you have marketing, asset management, operations. Can you really just branch out in any role once you hit a regional?
I think you need to look at where your giftings are, because if you follow those giftings, I think that you're going to excel in what you do. So if you follow your passion, you follow your gifting, how could you not succeed?
What would you say your giftings are?
I am very good at managing large volumes of information, and I've got a pretty positive attitude about it. So if you've got a big change happening or a big organization with a whole lot of information, I can keep track of all of it and keep my team on the same path. but I'm also really good at looking at patterns. So, and funny, my mom will tell you these stories, like from an infant, I could notice patterns and things and changes. When you're managing that much information, you see what I call a blip. You're like, okay, we've got these things going on and there's a blip. So is that a blip or is that actually something I need to spend a little bit of time on? So now I'm going to spend my energy on the blip, not the other 10 things that are in line. Or is that blip showing me that the other 10 things have a problem? But I'm not going to invest a whole lot of time in the other 10. I'm going to invest my time in the one. And if I see 2 or 3, I'm like, all right, now we have a new pattern emerging. Where am I going to spend my time and my energy digging into it and really uncovering what's going on?
That's really interesting. You said your mom would tell you that you would see, tell me about that.
She'll just tell stories about like walking in a room, like being able to point out like, oh, that one's different, or putting things together in groups. It's just how I'm wired.
What subjects did you gravitate to in school?
Music and math were
Music and math.
which actually go hand in hand a lot more than people realize.
How?
I didn't know. Well, because music it's so structured. It's free forming, but it is very structured. And math, oh my goodness. I took math classes as an elective in high school. Like I just love math.
But how does music and math go hand in hand?
Music, it's patterns. It's patterns, it's numbers. You can count on it.
What instruments did you play?
Violin.
Violin.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So going back to asset management, you've been in the industry for how many years?
Oh, goodness. 30 years.
So if you look back, when you first started versus now, how has describe to me what the role of technology was when you first started in the industry?
Okay, don't laugh. All right. So do you remember, you might not even remember, you would print your rent rolls on your dot matrix with the little papers on the side with the holes, like on the printer. You would run your own screening, and then you would make those decisions at the site level, which I love how that's more automated and more hands-off. I think that's a great idea. We would take our checks to the bank. That was always like daunting. Like you don't want to drive that much money to the bank. It's a big burden. And then I remember, oh goodness, I don't even remember what you call that now. Is it when you log into a computer and it's just like the little green dash that shows up? Because if we're talking pre-internet.
Yeah.
Right.
This is yeah.
So you would like fax your reports to the main office and yeah.
That's wild. Where do you see technology going in the next 5 years with AI and I just feel like so much has changed in the last 5 years that I feel like if we look at 20 years from now, we're going to have I think robotic leasing agents at properties or something.
Right. I hope that we never take the human element out of it. I hope that it's always relational and that we use the technology as a tool. If you look back at where technology started, we need it. We love it. It is why you're driving across the country right now is because of technology. You would not have been able to do this in one of the first cars that was ever manufactured. So I think as a society, it's so good to have all this technology. I never want to lose the human element because that's what separates us from just creation and being amazing humans in these relationships. So I still handwrite cards. My kids, they're like, "Oh, that's what mom does." I'm like, but it's nice getting that in the envelope, in your mailbox, somebody just taking the time to make a note. So in our industry, I do hope that human relationship or the person you can talk to, if you need a little bit of empathy, you need some understanding about why your situation needs to be dealt with a little bit differently. If I'm a customer, I'm like, look, I've got these circumstances, but if it's all, we're just checking boxes because it fits our electronic form, it's taking the human element out of it. And I don't want that, but I want the technology to be so supportive that we have more time for the humanness of what we do.
I think this is one of these industries. I think going back to what you said earlier about the leasing agent and the ability for the leasing agent's relationship with the prospective resident to influence whether the person rents or not, I think is exactly why the human element is so important, right? You look at a really fun question I asked ChatGPT the other day was, project yourself out 20 years and think about what the Like, what would the jobs be that will still exist that you won't be able to automate? And some of the answers were really all about human connection. So therapists, in some ways, some forms of podcasting, and anything that had to do with human connection wasn't automatable. And I think it's funny, I run an AI company, but at the same time, ironically, I think that human connection is so undervalued, even in sales, right? You have in the tech world, you have all these like AI SDR tools. So sales, like an AI leasing agent but it's all email and it's so gimmicky and robotic that like people are just getting normalized. And in some ways, the more technology evolves, the more AI is out there reaching out, it's just going to get normalized, and people are going to drown in all the spammy emails and the noise and all that stuff. So in some ways, like, you have to do things that are different, because otherwise you're just going to blend into the crowd.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with you. And when it comes to housing, I think that is something that is, so in our hearts, right? Our shelter, that's a need.
Yeah.
That's not just like a widget that you're buying off the internet.
Exactly. I mean, I was talking to Melanie French, and she was mentioning and it really struck me, housing is your biggest expense every year. You as a renter, when you're finding your apartment, you're dedicating at times 35% of your salary, into where you're going to live. So in many ways, it's the biggest decision you're making all year. Mm-hmm. And we as a technology company, and you as an operator, in some ways we have a duty to make sure that we're creating the most optimal experience. Because I know for me, something that really reinforced why I'm doing what I'm doing is in 2019, 2020, I lived in San Francisco, and me and my co-founder were living together. And instead of, we were like, hey, we're working all the time. The apartment we live in doesn't really matter. Let's just sign something that's close to the office, because we're not going to be there anyway. And I was just so wrong, because I realized how impactful the experience of my house is to my day-to-day. We lived in the Soma district, which is south of Market in San Francisco, and it was right across the freeway. And the trade-off I made was like, okay, the apartment is really nice, but it's not in a good area. But I was like, well, I'm either going to be in the office or I'm going to be in my apartment, so it doesn't really matter. Mm-hmm. And every day we would walk outside, and it was really rampant homeless population. This was 2020, and it was noisy and just not clean, and it just really impacted me to the degree that my co-founder and I, in some ways, moved to LA because of that experience.
Wow. It
was just not fun to live in. And it made me just reconsider. When I moved to LA, we stayed in Airbnbs. But when I finally signed my own place about 8 months ago, I did 20 different tours, and I went through the process that we're solving myself. And I was like, I'm not going to shortcut this process, because the place that I live in has a massive experience in my internal well-being, and my internal well-being influences the way I run the company, influences the way I interact with the team, influences the way I interact with the world. And it just is so, when you actually dig into how important your living environment is to your well-being, it just makes a huge difference. So I think that experience, having, gone through the rental process myself, really made me realize how important it is, to make sure we're providing a good living experience, whether it's the actual, amenities, maintenance, all that stuff.
No, I agree with you. And I'm going to throw out there one other is, nobody wakes up one day and says, oh, I feel like moving. That sounds like an amazing experience. Let's redo all the addresses and the utilities and the setup and the moving truck and the movers. It's painful. So our leasing consultants need to help lessen the blow, because that person is going to move, and we move people in and out where we get numb to it. This person might only move every couple of years. Help them through the process. And that to me is a really good leasing consultant. So if we can have some technology that helps with the addresses and the setup and all those nitty gritty things, but I can walk this person through and have a peaceful moving experience, that's huge.
Super huge. Yeah. What other role do you think impacts? Do you think the community manager is one of those other roles that really impacts like the experience?
Yes, the flavor of the property, really. So they'll set the tone. One of my pet peeves is like clean offices. Is the manager making sure it's clean every day? If you walk in and the office is in disrepair or not clean, like how are you going to feel about your apartment? Those things. So I do think, and how they lead the team is important.
I actually don't. So I don't know too much about. So when you're a community manager, do only nicer like Class A, Class B buildings have that role, or do Class C buildings have like a community manager role too?
Most properties will have a community manager, and if they're small enough to not merit a second full person in the office, it will just be the community manager.
Okay. What are the types of events that people are, what are the types of events that community managers are doing nowadays?
Events like for resident events?
Yeah. So is that a function of the community manager?
It is. The leasing agent will usually take point on those things. The community manager comes with more experience to share their ideas along their path. I think it depends on the property, really. I had a property once that it was new to us. I had to do a big push on renewals. Like we did a renewal party. We just brought in people and we're like, we'll bring in dinner and you can just sign your paperwork while you're here. Like, we're going to make this really easy for you. Come on down and meet us for the new management company. And we had two things going on. This is like over in the Willamette Valley. So we had like the wine and cheese corner and somebody standing over there with wine and cheese. And we had like the beer and the pizza going on. I had to do 2 more beer and pizza runs while the wine and the cheese stayed. That was the flavor of that property. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I'm telling you, for every resident function from then on, it was like pizza night. It was sodas. It was like just that casual finger food sort of thing. And I've had other properties where the pizza will sit and the cheese and wine are going to be gone. Well, let's listen to what the residents want and give the residents that. They're both great functions.
What is the hardest part about your job today?
Let me think about that one. I think probably you get to a point where you are, because I work very closely with the clients, right? And every client has their goal, and we all know that, and that's never been like a challenge. But you've got multiple clients, multiple departments, and at this level, I've always said it's going to be along with strong personalities, because you get to a point where you're working with other directors, and other directors are also going to have strong personalities, and us all being positive and working together. It's intentional. It's never anything that's just going to fall in your lap.
Mm. And if you were to be it's a fun question or a thought experiment to ask, because most folks I've talked to in this industry have been in the industry for a long time. Very few have actually moved from another industry. I can count, on one hand, the people that have. If you were to move to a different industry, what would it be?
It's funny. I wouldn't. And it sounds so weird to say that, because the question is, what would you do? But I have given that thought before in the past. I've had some during moves or health challenges, things like that you just kind of reevaluate what you're doing. You're like, is this really where I want to be? I'm like, I really love what I do. I really love what I do. And I'm so blessed for that. But every day is so different. Every day is a challenge. And I'm always working on something. It can never be the same thing day in and day out, because we're working with humans. And by nature, we're all very different. So I get my math. I get my marketing. I get to make models. I get to work with people. I get to work with all kinds of people. I get to create. I get to build budgets, HR. So really just the whole gamut of everything. I love it. And maintenance. And I love maintenance.
You like being able to touch every part of the...
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Okay. That's really helpful. What about some of your favorite parts of the job? Like, what stands out in particular? Do you enjoy, do people manage today?
Yes, I do. I manage lots of people, which I love my people. I love my teams. It's great. One of my favorite parts of what I do, though, is the problem solving and efficiencies. I'm really into efficiencies. It's a game even in my own house. with my kids. I'll be like, okay, that didn't go as smooth as it could. So the next time we clean out the pantry, how are we going to game plan this, right? And it's become a game for me. Not that I don't take it serious, but it's those chess pieces on the board. I'm like, okay, if we do this, and it's going to save all this time. And that's the fun part for me. And maybe that comes back to finding the patterns and the math of it and just the most efficient way to get things done. And then we have this other free time to do all the things we love. I don't want to spin my wheels on things that don't need to have my wheels spun on.
And that's just the way your brain is wired, do you think?
100%. I just see things. I'm like, oh, how can we do that better next time? Like, well, why don't we wait till the next time? I'm like, no, you need to make a plan now. So when the next time it happens, you know what you're going to do. And you don't have to think about it. You can just execute it. And I roll that out to my teams too. I work very hard. You'll hear me tell them, I try to communicate a certain set of rules or a box so that you can bounce around within that box all day long with confidence that I'm not going to come in and slap your hand. I'm not going to correct you. You're operating in a way that I am so consistent. You, with confidence about being in trouble or not, you can solve problems. If you're outside this box, I need you to put in a phone call and there will be I won't look down on you. There will be no repercussions because this is what I said. So it can feel a little controlling, but at the same time, I find it very freeing because now I know my team is doing what they need to do and they've got the tools to operate. And then I can be working on the stuff that I need to work on.
It's funny you bring up you love making things more efficient. In college, I studied industrial and systems engineering. And the whole way I chose my major, industrial engineering is kind of systems engineering is kind of a mix between business and engineering. It's all about efficiency and making things better. And in some ways, I enjoy that because I think there's a dopamine release associated with making things better and improving things. I'm talking to the.
I hadn't thought about that before, but okay.
Well, because that's why we do things, right? Like, is because it feels good. So for me, like making things better, improving things, solving problems, it's all associated to some sort of like dopamine release. And that's why we do things, because it feels good and then you do it again and so on.
That makes sense.
Okay. In terms of hiring and your leadership style, maybe we'll start with the leadership style. Like, how would you categorize your leadership style if you were to categorize it?
I am very clear with expectations. I commented on before so that people can operate and know when they're doing what they're supposed to be doing and that they're on the right track. So I work hard at that. And lifting each other up and being positive, I think is important because especially regional managers roll up to me directly. I've got a lot of people on my team, but the regional managers particularly roll up to me. And when you're in that role, you are now solving more problems. So you don't get the residents who come in that they don't call up the regional managers and say that they're super happy with their service usually, right? It's just less common. They're going to get the problems. So they're going to get beat up on a more regular basis. So keeping each other lifted up, I think, is good. I also work hard to make sure people can bring me their mistakes. I work very hard at that. And I learned that lesson a very long time ago from one of my mentors and old bosses. And I'd made a very big mistake. And I was super green at the time. I was like, what did I do? And I walk into my office and I'm like, my boss's office, like, I made a whoops. And she's like, a whoops? I'm like, a big whoops. And this is what I did. This is how I want to solve it. And I've got A, B, and C. And B is my favorite. And she's like, okay, go call the client. Go with B. Run with it. I'm like, you got it. I run down the hall and she yells at me. She's like, Rebecca. And I'm like, what? She's like, bet you never do that again. I'm like, no, never again am I going to make that error. And I haven't. But I want that to be that person for my team, that they come to me with solutions. I encourage that. I will walk them through if I don't think their solution has the best outcome because I just have a little bit more experience.
Are you pretty direct in your communication? Are you good at...
Yeah, I had to start putting some edges on it, like soft edges on it.
Oh, because you were too direct.
Yes.
So you don't have a problem with being direct?
No.
Yeah.
No. In fact, I had to work harder at
being less direct. So
yes.
you wouldn't say you're a people pleaser?
No, I am loyal and I find my job satisfaction in doing a really good job.
So that's good. And or maybe I shouldn't categorize it as good or bad, but early on in my career, I would try to please people. So I would basically like, rather than focusing on what you said, doing a good job or doing, optimizing for the job, I would optimize for the person's feelings. And it's a tricky thing. And in some ways it being really direct is better for the company, right? Rather than like trying to optimize to please somebody's emotions. Cause sometimes they'll be at odds. Mm-hmm. That's just the reality.
Right. And if I'm given a particular goal that I need to meet, then my job is to get the team to meet that goal. And if somebody in the middle decides they want to do something different because it feels different, it's going to take the whole team off mission. So I work hard at making logic-based decisions, not emotional decisions. But we can't ignore the emotions because we're human beings, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that that's kind of the marriage that needs to happen. But I really am kind of born with all right,
logical.
well, hey, we've got to get over here to A, B, and C.
Yeah.
Like, let's do it. But if you want people to come along with you, then you need to be positive and help them see the vision and use their tools and their skills and experience to help you get there. If we just say my way or the highway, like, why would anybody want to come be on the team? And it's no fun for me at the end of the day. I can't do all that they do.
Yeah. And you want to also connect with your team, obviously, because that's a big part. That's, where you spend a lot of your life is work, and you want to be able to, because it's really interesting when I listen to, I listen to a lot of podcasts and watch a lot of YouTube videos. And one of the things that I hear commonly amongst high performers is that they just love working with great people. Like if you are a high performer and you're working with people, the people that you work with and the quality of their work really impacts your like day to day. That's one of the things that people describe as like their top joys of life is like working with great people. And I've at least seen the inverse of that and how that impacts me and my energy of, you just feel drained and you're just not aligned and all of these things. Mm-hmm. When you think about hiring, like do you have a certain hiring philosophy that you, that like you think about when you're looking to hire? How do you think about that?
Well, it's a few things, but one of them is I have to keep the business goals in the back of my mind always, because those are the logic-based decisions that we make. So bringing somebody onto the team that helps achieve those goals, I think is number one. And then we need to find someone who melds with the rest of the team as well. Because if you bring in someone who's just a little seed of poison, it will bring everything down. And you can't have that. If it's a particularly tough goal that your group is supposed to be attaining, don't hide that from the person coming in. Because if you sell it all as sunshine and rainbows and they get in and it's tough, it's an uphill climb, that's not what they signed up for. So I think there's some importance there in the truth of that. And recently, because it's such a small, regional manager is a small team. So I have a large team, but the regional managers that roll up to me, we're small and we're tight and we have to lean on each other a lot. Got to have a lot of positivity. The last person we brought onto the team, I actually said, if you want, I'd love for you to go meet the other regional managers and you can ask them all kinds of questions about me, about the job that we're doing, the goals we're trying to accomplish, because like if you're in it, we're in it to win it. But if they say something about me, and I called them all, I said, you better tell this person how it really is, because don't sing my songs if you just not believing in the mission that, or the way that I'm working over here. And she came on and oh my gosh, she has just been hit the road and just part of the team, and it's worked out really well.
You mentioned at some point one of your mentors. If you look at your career from start to finish, who stands out as some of the big mentors or role models?
I've had a few. So Rose Spratt was my first community manager when I was a leasing agent, and I was I was a 19-year-old with a lot of big opinions about things I didn't know a whole lot about. And she really saw some good things in me and kind of helped bring me up. That was great. I went on to go work for a woman, her name's Freddie Lunt, and adore her. She gave me my first regional manager chance and taught me a lot and got me in front of clients and helped me with that aspect of things. Really enjoyed her. And then I went to go work for a small family-owned company. It was called Dalton Management, and it was Jeff and Brad Denson and their father, Dale. I actually helped them celebrate their 50th anniversary. So they were smaller by design, and they would bring on clients that, you know, they were new or familiar with. And they were so near and dear to my heart. I worked hard for them, and they worked very hard for me. And they taught me about buying and selling and the transaction and the due diligence, which has really boosted me to where I can be today. And they did all of it. It was great. Somebody with all that experience, and he's like, hey, this is how I treat my teams. And I was like, that's really smart. But it's because he's had so many years on the planet. Like, you can't discount real life experience with that. So I think that family also, huge influence on how I manage. They poured a lot of time and energy, like I said, helping me get to where I'm at. And there was a time I got very sick when I was working for them, and they picked up slack, but they didn't tell me they were picking up my slack. Of course, because I'm a high achiever and a little bit of a control freak, I thought I was doing everything the way that I was, but I wasn't. And they stepped in and they helped me, and they were amazing. So,
Where do you think the high achieving and desire, the control stuff comes from?
Oh, because I was broke growing up. Like, if you wanted to get out of that cycle, you had to work hard for it. It was not going to be handed to me.
Do you remember that being a sole goal growing up?
Yeah, getting out of that cycle. So one thing, and my mother's done a lot of things for me, but one thing she did tell me was like, this is not normal, and I don't want you to think that this is where you should end up. She didn't have enough, she doesn't have a crystal ball. She couldn't tell me like what I need to do or where I could go, but what she could tell me is this isn't where it ends, right? And I think that sometimes we know we want our children to be better than we had it, but we forget to say it out loud.
How many children do you have?
3 daughters.
3 daughters. And then where'd you meet your husband?
Outside of it was Hillsboro, Oregon. Yeah, we met out there in the Portland area.
And how old are your daughters?
15, 17, 28.
Okay, awesome. And have they followed your footsteps in the industry or?
No.
Not at all.
No, one is an art major. The other one is thinking about some journalism and business and marketing. And the last one right now, she's settling on architectural engineering.
Awesome. Well, Rebecca, I want to thank you for being on the show. This was, I feel like we had a pretty wide-ranging discussion from your managing philosophy, your hiring, a little bit about your upbringing. So I really appreciate you taking the time and chatting with us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Awesome.